So with that, without further ado, I'm going to introduce my two co-curators, who will be our first performers. So Gina DeVries is a genderqueer femme, a queer paysan pervert, and a writer, performer, and activist with a long history of doing organizing in and with queer, trans, and sex worker communities. She's getting her MFA at SF State, and you can find her online on the interwebs at ginadevries.com. And Elena Rose is a Filipina Ashkenazic mixed class trans dyke. Mestiza is I kind of messed up my not gender grammar, which actually the word gender and grammar are related actually. But, okay, anyway, so Elena Rose is all that and a writer, preacher, scholar, and survivor from rural Oregon. Dedicated to the projects of radical love, community building, and queer ministry, she writes online as Little Light at takingsteps.blogspot.com and is busy finishing her first book, Mountain of Myrrh. So please welcome up my co-curators.
Supposed to be up here performing tonight. Can you all hear me?
No.
Okay. Okay. I'm not is this good? No.
They can turn it up, that'd be awesome.
Can you turn it up?
It's up, you just have to get really close.
How's this?
Yeah.
Great. I'm not actually supposed to be up here performing tonight. My plan had been to step back, just curate an MC this year. But as Julia, Rose, and I were planning the cast list, we were specifically wanting to find non-trans women to be in the show who were not just friends and allies of trans women, but lovers and partners of trans women. Because this is a spoken word show, we also wanted these women to be good writers and dynamic performers, and we wanted to prioritize people who hadn't been in the show previously. We had a whole list of trans women performance artists who we wanted in the show, way more people than we could actually fit into just one evening of performance. But when it came to cis women and female-assigned genderqueer folks who hadn't previously been in Girl Talk, at a certain point, we got a little stumped. Okay, so we need like 3 more cis women to balance out the numbers. Well, what about Dee? She was in the show in 2009, and also we're asking her partner to be in this year's lineup. Okay, what about Seed? 2010, remember? What about Anne? Well, she's really great, but she was in the show in 2009, and I don't know if she's actually dated any trans women. And so on. Like that. For 3 hours. Over a lot of Chinese food. Julia finally said, "Screw. I'm really tempted to email all the trans dykes I know for a list of cis women they are dating or have dated who we also know are good performers." Rose said, "This is really pathetic, and this is why this show is important." We all sat there for a long time, running through our mental Rolodexes, frustrated, pissed. "You should perform again, Gina," Rose finally said. "You've dated trans women, and we know that you're a good writer and performer." Thanks, but the fact that I'm one of very few we can think of is really disappointing. When Julia and I first started talking about the show that would become Girl Talk back in 2008, my girlfriend at the time was a trans woman. Many of my oldest, dearest, and closest friends are trans women, and most of my activist and organizing colleagues, especially around sex work and reproductive justice, are also trans women. And I doubt this is news to anyone here, but it bears saying. I was frustrated with the fact that when I was in predominantly cis queer women's spaces, I saw the community bending over backwards to be trans-inclusive towards trans men, but by and large, being shitty towards all these women I loved, women who were my family. I was frustrated that if I talked about having a trans primary partner, because I'm a femme, female-assigned genderqueer, people assumed I was talking about dating a trans guy. I was frustrated that people were surprised that my girlfriend was trans, and butch, and genderqueer. Then the assumption was that of course she was femme because she's trans. I was frustrated that over the months, cis-queer people asked really inappropriate questions about my partner's body and our sex life. Questions I know they would not have asked me if I was with a trans guy. And I also knew that in the grand scheme of things, the bullshit that I put up with was really just a thimbleful of bullshit compared to what my partner was dealing with from cis people every day. But at a certain point, the accumulation of it all made me want to see a space where cis and trans women could actually get together and talk to each other about our relationships, without the stupid questions, without the weird-ass assumptions about the kinds of friendship or sex or love we might have for each other, without the bizarre and frankly misogynistic centering of trans men and trans masculinity as the hot and sexy heartthrobs of queer women's culture. It seems really simple, basic, but the overwhelming response that this show has gotten, tickets selling out in a flash, requests to tour the show in multiple cities, blog posts all over the world, press in the US and Canada, and last year, a college student in Portland writing her entire thesis about the 2009 show. All of this tells me that what we're doing here is important and necessary. That as simple as this idea might be, it's still needed.
God, it's good to see all of you tonight. I'm reminded abruptly of the last time I emceed a show in the Dyke Bar where I met my wife. And I handed the mic to the guy with the stand-up routine. And he got up there and 2 yards from me said to this crowd of at least half 100 queer women, "So, like everyone here, I have a vagina, am I right?" Yeah, and I was the one making that face while the room laughed. So, when I was invited to the cast of the first Girl Talk 2 years ago, I was shocked that there could be such a thing. A time to heal the hurting gaps between cis and trans women in queer community. A time to start, anyway. And it's overdue if the emails that we get are any indication. I wish you would come to New York, Seattle, New Orleans, Toronto, Durham, Houston. We could really use that here. We could really use that here, right here. And I wish that there were a Girl Talk in every damn town. I wish we could go to each of those places and show them the way we hold each other. Friends and comrades, ex-girlfriends and trouble sharers, lovers and runners. Show them that we can build this, that we have this. There is a need for this work. And that is why we keep coming back, even when we feel ridiculous over burritos and pot stickers well after decent hours, trying to come up with a list of people we trust to show you that this can be done, that we can love each other under one queer roof, that we can know each other. It's not just about the sex, or the dating war stories, or the dyke drama, or the poetry, about who gets invited to what organization, who's allowed on what land, who is untouchable to who, though it is all of those things. It's those late nights passing fresh pens and chili sauce around the table. It's heads together crying over fresh heartbreak and old grief. It's hands in hands. As a community, we have lost so much time. We have wasted so many hours and months and decades in bitter mistrust that still goes on, and we have taught ourselves a loneliness that we never, any of us, needed. When we could have been there for each other, when we could have lent each other strength, when we could have been picking up the phone for that girl talk we needed, we were lonely instead. We turned elsewhere and we let sisterhood be impossible. It is way past time for more of this work. It is way past time for us to come home to each other. I got on a plane 2 years ago without much of a plan besides, I think, crashing at Gina's place. And you always find sequins on you for days after when you crash at Gina's place. Apparently we all know this. And finally meeting Julia Serrato and maybe gushing a little, and by little I mean a lot. I think I actually told her that I expected her to be 8 feet tall. I got on a plane 2 years ago, trying hard to swallow the hope that this right here, this sold out house of all of you who believe in this work, who love each other, who are so ready to never be alone again, that this just might be here when I arrived. This packed house of family. And you were. And you are for the 3rd year in a row. And I think we can do this together.